Hello, Booktube. It's Tuesday, and in our little corner of Booktube, that usually means people drop what they're doing and do tags for Tag Tuesday. I've got two that I want to do today, but the main one is the S tag. Jim at Jim's Books and Reading and Stuff is doing tags right through the alphabet, and this is the next one. This is the latest one, the S tag. I'll leave a link to his original video, and let's get straight to the prompts here. The first prompt, S is for science fiction. Which science fiction author have you read the most books by? And for me, it's Isaac Asimov. I think I've read probably 300 Isaac Asimov books, which is only 1/5 of the number of books that he wrote, but it's still far, far more than any other. There have been times when whatever little library I had access to, if I had no other books and no money, there were times when the only science fiction author that I had to read was Asimov, and there'd be dozens of titles instead of only one. So over the years, over the decades, I have read more of him than anybody. Then S is for Star Trek. Which is your favorite Star Trek series? Despite the fact that Star Trek Enterprise has a captain who has his dog on board the vessel while he's commanding it, and despite the fact that that dog is a beagle, I'm still going to give it to Star Trek, the original series. That won my heart right from the first time that it aired. Then the next prompt is S is for school story. What is your favorite book with a school setting? I'm not all that fond of books with school settings. I've found usually the only way that they can be made dramatically interesting is if the school gets blown up at the end. I'm going to say Ender's Game. Orson Scott Card is the one that came to mind first. Then the next prompt is S is for satire. Which is your favorite satirical novel? Hands down, Gulliver's Travels. It will, I think, probably always win for me. Then the log cabin prompt. We are moving our scene. We are decamping to a log cabin in the frozen wilderness. You are in a log cabin with no internet and no Kindle. In the log cabin are 4 books. Scarlet Sins by Dane Cobain, The Sword of Kaigen by M.L. Wang, The Accidental by Ali Smith, and City by Clifford D. Simak. Which book do you start reading? I would start with Clifford D. Simak. Which book will you give as a gift to a booktuber, and which booktuber? I would need to know what the last 5 books were that they read, the last 10 books that they read. I don't give blind recommendations for books, absolutely not. Especially not based, I presume, as the question implies, on my idea of their demographic readiness to receive the book. No. I need to know what they read. So I wouldn't do it at all. It is a little cold in the cabin. Which book would you burn in the hearth for warmth? My first indication that the log cabin in the wilderness here that Jim has in mind has no dogs in it. That's a horrifying thought on its own. But if I'm in what is it again here? You're in a log cabin with no internet and no Kindle. A log cabin. If I'm locked in the cabin, well, then it wouldn't matter. If I'm not locked in the cabin, I bet I could find something to burn other than a book. But I don't know. Probably the M.L. Wang book I would burn first. Eventually, you're going to have to burn them all. If you have only, 4 books? That's about half an hour if you're in a cold cabin. So let's see here. In which would you leave behind for the next visitor? I would need to know who that visitor is. I would just leave them all. I don't make blind recommendations. Then S is for Steinbeck. Which is your favorite Steinbeck novel? I'm going to vex you Steinbeck fans here by pointing to his book on King Arthur. I've sang its praises on this channel before. I really think it's good. I really do. I'm not trying to be contrary. I know it should be East of Eden or The Grapes of Wrath, but I love that. I think that King Arthur book, because it was a lifelong passion project, because it didn't have any commercial anxieties attached to it other than the fact that Steinbeck, I think, probably guessed that it wouldn't sell. But not in terms of what his other writer friends were doing. I think it breathes with the kind of world-weary sarcasm, the kind of sparkly-eyed humor that he was known for in his personal life, but that's almost nowhere to be found in his books. It's in King Arthur. It's in the King Arthur book that I find it most, and I like it. Then let's see here. S is for Sartre. Jean-Paul Sartre. Is Sartre worth reading? Nope. S is for Shakespeare. Which is your favorite Shakespeare play? That would be Julius Caesar. Not Henry VIII, believe it or not, but Julius Caesar. Then what was the last Shakespeare play you saw performed at the theater? I had to think about this. It was on Broadway, and it was Twelfth Night. It was a performance of Twelfth Night. all of which I have forgotten, except for Philip Bosco. The actor Philip Bosco played an incredible Malvolio. I've seen many, many great turns as Malvolio in Twelfth Night, but I don't think I've ever seen the character realized better, more three-dimensionally, than the job that Philip Bosco does. And he brings the house down. Malvolio, people tend to forget. People who know Twelfth Night always think, when they think of Malvolio, they always remember his horrific end, the horrific final moments. And they don't remember that earlier on in the play, if you've got a real confident actor, someone who has the house in the palm of their hand, Malvolio has some bits that can bring down the house. I shall wear my stockings cross-gartered. That will bring down the house if it's done right. And I've mostly often seen it not done right. But Bosco had Malvolio in all of his registers. And that was a long time ago. That was well over 10 years ago that I saw that. It's been that long. That is probably the longest gap of me not seeing Shakespeare on the stage. And it's a little bit melancholy to think that I may never see Shakespeare on the stage again. That's kind of melancholy. Let's see here. S is for Stalin. Stalin was a monster, but does he have any redeeming qualities? Nope. S is for short story. What is your preferred length of fictional reading material? Well over 900 pages. I like big, fat books. I'm perfectly happy with the slim ones. Some slim ones are my all-time favorites. House on Nauset Marsh, Owl by William Service. But I like big, big, big books. So my preferred length would be 800 pages or more. Let's see here. S is for subscribers. Not a prompt, just a thank you. I've passed the 500 subscriber mark. Congratulations to Jim. He has a wonderful channel. And 500 is a big milestone. That is wonderful. Then bonus prompts, which you almost do. There are bonus prompts only when in Jim's characterization, but I'm in charge here. S is for Scotland. What is your favorite book set in Scotland? Well, there's a whole bunch of stuff by that Robert Louis Stevenson guy. But for me, it's The Loch by Steve Alten. Of Meg fame, Steve Alten wrote, and he's still writing, a series of novels about a giant prehistoric killer shark named Meg. But he took time out of his busy schedule to write a novel about the Loch Ness Monster called The Loch, and it's amazing. It is certainly my favorite novel set in Scotland. Then S is for supernatural. What is your favorite supernatural story? If we don't stretch things too much here, I mean, you could say the Iliad is a supernatural story. You could say Ovid's Metamorphoses is a supernatural story. But if by supernatural we mean that the supernatural is an eruption with an I into a natural world, that's what a supernatural story is. So it's not a myth. It's that you have a normal world and the supernatural enters into that world. If we say that, then it would be Dracula. S is for superhero. Who is your favorite superhero? Well, that would be Superboy. Not the clone Superboy, who is the only Superboy that DC Comics runs now. They're the only one they get to have. But Clark Kent, when he was a boy. Superboy. Since DC Comics can't, for a whole thicket of legal reasons, they can't have a Superboy comic that is about young Clark Kent. They've got around it, and they'll continue to get around it because they've got more money than God to pour into lawyers and lawsuits. But once upon a time, for decades and decades and decades, Superboy had his own comic, and it was very popular. And the adventures of a superheroic flying boy and his flying dog in the American Midwest struck a chord. but by extension, since Superboy doesn't really exist anymore, it'd be Superman. And then the final prompt. S is for Scandinavian noir, Scandi noir. Have you tried this subgenre of crime fiction? I have tried it many, many times, and mostly come up empty, which always makes me feel guilty because I know how popular it is. But it just doesn't, it just has never done it for me. I don't know, I just haven't found the right one, but I've tried the big ones. I've tried the ones that, actually modern noir just in general, whether it's Scandi noir or not, it just doesn't do anything for me at all. I don't know if I'm just not getting what is supposed to be enjoyed here. The main characters are almost always men, and the men are almost always people you wouldn't want to be in an elevator with, much less have solving the murder of your great aunt Tilda. So I haven't got it. And I've never really liked a single of them. I've read many, many examples, and I still do. Still publish regularly, and I get them, and I read them. But I've never read one that I actually actively liked. So that's a bit of a downer note to end the S tag with. But there you go. That is the S tag. Feel free to do this and all the other alphabet tags. But in the meantime, I'm going to wrap this up. But I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.